There was just this huge, large crash behind me, and by the time I turned around to see what was happening, there was 3 armed men in the apartment, and one had a gun to the back of my head and pushed me down on the floor.
Until that moment, it was a normal September night for Amanda Fry. She was a University of Arizona senior at the time, studying with her boyfriend in his apartment, when 3 strangers broke in and robbed and beat the couple.
After we realized, they were gone, at first I was laying on the ground and I kept thinking about when I lived in Montana. They say if you get attacked by a grizzly bear, you just lay on the ground with your face down, and they say you have to wait a really long time after they leave to make sure they're really gone, because they'll attack and they'll retreat a little bit and then attack again. After they had left the apartment, I was laying there on the ground going, I just have to hold still because they're not really gone. Maybe they're not really gone.
The attackers were really gone, but Amanda's fear and anxiety kept coming back.
The first time I tried to go out with some friends on like a Friday night, I think it was probably 2 months after I had a couple of drinks, was convinced that I had seen one of them in the bar and was just freaking out and crying hysterically in the bar. And I'm not that kind of person. I'm not an emotional person, and definitely not in public. I ended up medically withdrawing from the semester because at that point I was so far behind.
Amanda sought help through campus health services and was soon diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD.
So often when we think about post-traumatic stress disorder, we think about it in the context of military trauma or combat duty, but PTSD can occur for a lot of other reasons as well. It can be anything from a rape to a physical attack, to a car accident. I've had patients with dog bites. And people can get post-traumatic stress disorder from a cancer diagnosis. It's a life-threatening diagnosis. Seeing the death or a serious injury of a close loved one can be a reason as well. For women, one of the most prevalent ways that post-traumatic stress disorder occurs is not in the military or combat duty. It's usually some form of interpersonal violence, whether that's rape or molestation.
About 7% of the U.S. population will experience PTSD at some point in their lives. For these millions of Americans, the fight or flight response that helps people survive dangerous or difficult situations doesn't fade. They stay on high alert for months or years after a traumatic event, often beset by flashbacks or nightmares, unable to sleep, and compelled to avoid places or things that remind them of their trauma.
There's just those days where you just feel on edge, like you just feel like something's not right. And on those days, I still can't sit with my back to the door.
The sound of a bathroom stall closing is a trigger. Certain smells are triggers. Certain, touch is a trigger, and you never know when it's coming. You never know when there's a trigger around the corner, and it presents itself, and it just takes me right back to the trauma, right back to the point where I feel completely helpless.
As a survivor of sexual abuse and assault, Danielle McFarland faced PTSD symptoms so severe they drove her to attempt suicide 4 times.
Initially, PTSD was like trying to walk through quicksand, and it didn't matter what I tried to do. It seemed like it just got worse, and I was getting deeper, and it was harder to make any positive changes in my life. Everybody I knew was going out and living these, amazing lives, and I just would go to work and I'd come home and I felt safe. That was the one place that I could go. It was my little den.
For people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, one of the key things is that their lives become very constricted. Almost like you've gone in and built a castle for yourself, and you're trying really hard to keep things out. And so you create like a higher castle, and then you do a moat, and that drawbridge is up, and the castle gets higher and taller. But still things can fly over, still information gets in, so you just keep making your castle bigger and taller. What treatment does is it comes in and it knocks down the walls.
Treating PTSD is the same, whether in veterans or civilians. It can involve medication and other tools, but the most effective treatments force sufferers to revisit their trauma over and over again, to seek out the triggers they've been avoiding.
So we might have a person write or talk about the accident from when it started all the way to the end, and then they repeat that over and over and over again, so that it becomes more like a file that's filed in a filing cabinet.
To touch base on or talk about at this point?
What I tell my group and what I tell the people that I see individually is the trauma is never going to go away, but you need it to become a bad memory.
Counselor Kim Lindley leads PTSD support groups and has developed an intensive trauma recovery program that's focused on civilians. But programs like hers are rare. A 2015 study in the Harvard Review of Psychiatry found that treatment resources for non-veterans with PTSD are limited and hard to find.
It is very hard to know where to turn for this because it was an invisible diagnosis for a very, very long time.
Sure, normal time.
And the stigma of seeking help adds to the problem.
Trauma comes with a lot of guilt and shame, and so people don't like to seek services for it, and so they don't even ask.
Have a good rest of the day.
You too.
Amanda Fry and Danielle McFarland both found the help they needed, and it brought them back into their lives.
Ella.
Where's the bunny?
Don't feel ashamed, and don't let other people belittle how you feel. Everything affects everybody differently, and getting help isn't a sign of weakness. It's not. It's actually, I would say, a sign of strength.
I watched a documentary many years ago where a soldier shared his symptoms and his experiences. I remember him talking about nightmares and waking up and being curled in a ball, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been there, I've done that, that's happened to me. I'm not alone. You're not alone. You don't have to deal with this on your own, and just don't give up.